I would encourage you to turn your Bibles to Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24. Verse 3 says, as he sat on the Mount of Olives. So this is called the Olivet Discourse because it's the sermon that he gave on the Mount of Olives.
Yeah.
There you go. It's the second longest sermon that we have recorded of him behind the Sermon on the Mount. But the first two verses set the stage for everything that's going to follow after this. So notice the Bible says that Jesus has been in the temple for a while, previous chapters. And so Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. But he answered them, "You see all these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." So we need to understand what it is he's talking about and why they're pointing all this out and everything. So for those of you who like pictures, here we go. So this is the city of Jerusalem, and Jesus stayed. Now I know it's not the city, it's a model. Okay, but I can get the whole thing in one shot when it's a model. This is a model of the city of Jerusalem. This is actually in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. And so in Jesus' day, this was the whole city. Of course, this big giant thingamajob here, that's the temple. Okay, and so now we got a shot coming from another angle. And just so you know that this is south, west, north, and so over here is?
East. Oh,
y'all aren't nearly as bright as the first service. Like they all got it. Okay, so let's try this again, shall we? South, west, north, and east. Very good. So the temple's over here on the east side, and you can see how it just like dominated the landscape. And so now I think we've got a shot here of the actual temple itself. There we go. So this is these colonnades back here. That's known as Solomon's Porch, and this big area out here, the court of the Gentiles. For those of you who've read the New Testament, Life of Jesus, remember he drove out the money changers, and so they would have been in this area out here, and this thing right here is the actual temple itself. So we got kind of a close shot here. So out here you have like the bronze laver and the altar and all of that. And then in here would have been the Holy of Holies where the Ark of the Covenant would have been located and everything. And so this is the temple complex. So they would have been leaving this area and headed out this way when this happens. Now we got a shot here from kind of the southwest. The Romans built this giant thing up here called the Antonia Fortress. So you have all of this. Now, in order to build all of this, you need to level out because it's on a hill. And so we have this giant retaining wall, basically, that was built by Herod, and then the temple was built on top of that. Now here's something interesting for those of you who like history. About right in here, give or take a little bit, is what today is the Western Wall. So you ever see, like on TV, they show the Wailing Wall or whatever? And so that's about right in here anywhere because it's on the, which side of the temple? West, very good, yes. And so we have this giant retaining wall. So the temple itself is all gone. It doesn't exist anymore. The Romans, the temple caught on fire, gold melts at a pretty low temperature, and the gold melted and ran down between the stones. So the Romans took all the stones apart to get to the gold, just like Jesus said in verse 2, every stone will be taken down. Because when God predicts something, it always happens. Yeah. And so we have this now. You think about this retaining wall it's like still around after 2,000 years. And I think we got a picture here of the size to give an idea of the size of one of the blocks. And so they were massive. This is right here. It's underground now, but this was one of the one block. They weighed tons and tons. And the Temple Mount, now, sometimes we think about the Temple Mount, you think like maybe like the church, size of a church kind of deal, and it was massive. So here's the temple, there's the First Lady of First Baptist Chandler. So we have, but all of this, now y'all know the Dome of the Rock was not there in Jesus' day, right?
Yes.
Okay, it came around several hundred years later. And matter of fact, the rock wasn't there in Jesus' day. It's a meteorite that landed later. But I want you to see how massive the temple area was. It was a huge thing covering several acres. And so they've been on top of this. And these guys are impressed. You know why? Because it took about 70 years to build it. It's called Herod's Temple. It was a massive undertaking. And so they're impressed. Matter of fact, construction was still going on to some extent in Jesus' day. And so they say, man, look at all this. Isn't this impressive? And Jesus says, no. No. One of these days, all these stones are going to be thrown down. And so now they go out and they go across the Kidron Valley. And notice what it says in verse 3. As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And Jesus answered them, "See that no one leads you astray." Now, if you're wondering, where in the world is the Mount of Olives? Well, I'm glad you asked. So let's take an aerial shot. Now, y'all know that it didn't look like this in Jesus' day.
Correct. Yes, I'm with you.
Man, y'all worry me. And so this clearly is the Temple Mount. This is the western area here of the retaining wall, in the southern, the northern, and the eastern side. Here we have, down here's the Valley of Hinnom, the city of David. Anyway, so over here, you go across this valley called the Kidron Valley, and you see these green trees right here? Okay, that's on the Mount of Olives. And so anybody want to guess what kind of trees those are? Yes, very good, excellent, well done. That's why it's called the Mount of Olives. They have olive trees. They've had them for 1,000 years. And matter of fact, down in this area is probably the location of the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus would pray the night before he'd be crucified. And so they've gone across, and so now they're over here somewhere on this Mount of Olives on the east side. And the disciples come to him privately. Now, who are the disciples? Usually we think 12 apostles. And that may have been the case. But Jesus had a lot of other disciples. Matter of fact, we know at one point he sent out 70 of them, 2 by 2. So we don't know if this was a little bit larger group or just the 12. But regardless, note they come to him privately. That's significant. Because at the end of chapter 23, Jesus had announced he's not going to teach in public anymore. His public ministry, his teaching ministry is done. Everything that Jesus is going to teach from this point forward is just to his disciples, just to believers. One friend of mine said, these are secrets for the saints. And this is directed towards Jesus' followers to prepare them for the days ahead, particularly when he will be going away. And so notice now what they ask. When will these things be, meaning all these stones being taken down, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Now there are 2 terms here that are important. What is the sign? Not signs. What is the one thing we need to look for? What's the one sign that when it happens, then we know all this stuff is about to take place? But the second term is really bizarre. And when will your coming be? What? He's right there. They're with him. He already came. What in the world are they asking? Why would they ask when you're coming? They don't have any concept at this point that Jesus is going to die, rise again, go back to heaven, and then someday come again. So what do they mean when they say, what is the sign of your coming? Well, Jesus came in 3 days earlier. On Sunday morning, they waved a bunch of palm branches, and that's known as
Palm Sunday.
Palm Sunday. So they waved the palm branches, Palm Sunday, and this now is happening on Tuesday. So we're just a couple days removed from that. And so here's what they're saying. We saw you come in on this donkey, and they're waving the palms, everybody's singing Hosanna and all of that. And so what we want to know is, when are you going to follow that up by coming to the throne of David, your father, and reestablishing his kingdom and getting rid of the Romans? That's what we want to know. That would be the end of the age, the end of the Roman age, the end of the Roman dominance over them. When are you going to do that? So what's the thing we need to look for, and when is this going to happen? And then in verse 4, Jesus did not answer them. Well, he did, but not at all like what they expected. And Jesus answered them, "See that no one leads you astray." No discussion of a sign, no discussion of when, no discussion of a kingdom. Jesus just says, see that no one leads you astray. This is where he starts. Now, why does Jesus start with that? The reason is because staying true to Jesus Christ is far more important than mastering all the details of the future.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, if you know all the details of the future, but you're not true to Jesus Christ, all of your information is worthless. And so Jesus starts with what's really important, and that is that we stay faithful to him. See that no one leads you astray. Stay true to me. He doesn't answer the way that they expected, but this is most important. Before I tell you what's going to happen, number one, make sure you are true to me. Make sure that no one leads you astray. Now, we do this a lot in life. Someone asks a question, there's something they're interested in, but we need to deal with something else first. Let me see if I can illustrate what I'm saying. Let's suppose that someone came to you or came to me and said, hey, I'd like to learn how to shoot a gun. So, what do we start with? How to hold a gun? How to aim? How to load? No. You don't even touch a gun. We don't start there. We start with the 5 rules of firearm safety. Because we don't want you to touch a gun until you can do so safely.
Correct.
You're like, I don't care who we shoot. No, you want to, more important than handling the gun, and more important than aiming, more important than loading, the most important thing is that you understand the rules of firearm safety. You treat every gun like it's loaded. That's really the only rule you have to follow for certain, because all the rest flow from that. It's most important. Treat every gun like it's loaded. Always point a gun in a safe direction. We don't wave guns at people ever.
Right.
So you always point in a safe direction. Never put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot.
Yes.
Keep it off. Don't point at a target unless you're willing to shoot it. And then know everything around it, what's behind it, what's beside it, everything, anything that could be injured or collateral damage to be done. Master the 5 rules of firearm safety, then we'll talk about how to hold it, how to aim, how to load, how to shoot. And so they ask a question, they want to know about the end of the time. Jesus said, no. What we got to start with is stay faithful to me.
Yes.
See that no one leads you astray, because this is what's really important. So everything now is going to kind of flow out of that. Verse 5, for many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of the birth pains. Now he starts in verse 5, talking about the future, where he finished in verse 4. Stay true, be careful that no one, for many will come in my name saying, I am the Messiah, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. There are lots of false teachers throughout history. There are a lot of false teachers today, and unfortunately they lead many astray. And here's the thing, no one ever comes and says, no, wait, I'm a false teacher. Why don't you follow me? I lie and don't tell the truth, but you come follow me. I'm going to lead you astray from the truth, but you come. Nobody does that. False teachers all claim to be truth tellers. Yep. They claim to be representatives of God. He says, there are going to be many who are going to come who claim to be a Christ, and they're going to lead many astray. But that's not the only thing that's going to happen. You will hear of wars and rumors of war. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. Now, I'm a history major. It's really interesting. At the beginning of the 20th century, there was a magazine that was launched called The Christian Century. They followed the predominant view of most of Christianity at the beginning of the 20th century. That Christians were going to usher in an era of worldwide peace. And that war would get, everything would be wonderful, a utopia. And at the end of a long time, Jesus would return and sum everything up. And that looked like it was going to happen until we had a world war, and then a worldwide depression, and then another world war. That tends to kind of destroy that sort of theology. There was not going to be a Christian century. We were not going to usher in an era of peace and wonder. Do you know why? Because there are always going to be wars and rumors of war. Now, I do not believe that we should seek warfare.
No.
I believe that we should seek to avoid war at all costs. The reason we have a strong military and want a strong military is so that we can defeat someone if they mess with us, but we want to be big enough and strong enough that nobody messes with us. We want to prevent war that way. But there are always wars, and there's always rumors of war. And so what does Jesus say in regards to that? Do not be alarmed. Look, if you think a war is about to happen and you're of age to be drafted, you're concerned. If you're in the military and you hear there's going to be a war, you're concerned. If you have family who's in the military, and it causes concern. And so Jesus says, man, relax. Don't be worried. Do not be alarmed, because this is going to take place, wars and rumors of wars, but the end is not yet. These are not the sign that there's going to be, and there are always going to be wars and rumors of war. What about other stuff then? Verse 7. Well, nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. I don't know about you, but that sounds like war and rumor of war to me. There's always going to be strife among people. But not only that kind of thing is going to happen, but there's going to be famines and earthquakes in various places. In other words, history is going to be full of lots of bad stuff. Stuff that we bring on ourselves, wars and kingdoms against each other and all that. And then things that are beyond our control, famines and earthquakes and those, all of these are going to happen. Let me say verse 8, all of these are but the beginning of the birth pains. In other words, we're in the time when the contractions are real far apart. We haven't hit, the hard labor part yet. We've not reached the end. So Jesus basically saying pretty much through all of history, this is the way that it's going to be. And so notice what Jesus said right in the middle of all this description that the future is going to not always be great. Do not be alarmed. So I want to help us this morning to not be alarmed. We all have lots of verses we like. One that I've always liked is Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. Be still and know that I am God. The word be still actually means to let your hands drop. Guess what? God's big enough. He can carry it. He doesn't need your help.
That's right.
He's got this. So let's just practice a little bit. I want everybody to stand up if you can. Stand up. Now I want you to start wringing your hands like you're all worried. Some of you are your hand wringers. Man, you worry all the time. You just see the bad side of everything. If I was to tell you it's going to be a beautiful day, you'd say, yeah, but probably rain tonight. You're just like, you're one of those. So you're just worrying all the time. Here's what I want you to do. Just put your hands down. Relax. God's got this.
Yes.
God's got it. Trust Him. Be still and know that I am God. Some of you this week need to just do some hand dropping.
Yep.
God's not wringing His hands. You don't need to either.
Right.
Just be still and know that He is God. He will be exalted among the nations. Just relax. Don't be alarmed. God's bigger than all that.
Yes.
So quit your hand wringing and start doing some Jesus trusting. And be still and know that I'm God. Thanks, you can be seated. So He says, here's what's going to happen. So don't let anyone lead you astray, because there's going to be all this stuff that's going to happen. And then, beginning in verse 9, He said, but it's going to get worse than that. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death. And you'll be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. Because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. They will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you'll be hated. Now, why is Christianity hated? Unfortunately, some of the reasons we brought on ourselves. Arrogant, judgmental, legalistic, always talking about stuff we probably ought not to be talking about, and not talking about the things we should be talking about enough. But that's not the ultimate reason we're hated. The reason Christianity is hated is because we make this declaration. We have the truth. And the truth is that the only way to get to heaven is through Jesus Christ.
Yes.
The claim of exclusivity by Christianity is why we are hated. If we said, there are lots of ways to get there. There are lots of options to get to heaven. Nobody would care about all that other stuff. The reason we are hated is because we proclaim the truth is Jesus is the only way to heaven. And the reality is that is the truth. He is the only way to get to heaven. The only hope of forgiveness is through the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ and placing our faith and trust in Him alone. There are no other options, so that's why we are hated. But I'll be honest with you, that doesn't bother me. Look, if folks out there hate the folks in here because we claim that Jesus is the only way, then so be it. Listen, as long as I'm the pastor at First Baptist Chandler, we will never waver on this message. Jesus is the only way. Because this is the truth. But verse 10 bothers me greatly. Then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. See, verse 9 is talking about those that are non-Christians outside. Talking about church folk. But verse 10 says some of the folks here are going to turn against other people in here. That's concerning to me. That worries me. That bothers me that many will fall away. But not only just fall away, they're going to betray and hate one another. That there are those who claim to be followers of Jesus that when difficulty and trial and tribulation come are going to walk away because they were never one of us. Verse 11. Many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. Those who claim to be on the inside will be led astray by those who claim that they have the truth, but they are false prophets. And then verse 12, he kind of pulls all that together. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. Here's what Jesus is saying. As long as Christianity is culturally acceptable, there will be people who will say they are Christians when they are not. But if Christianity becomes socially unnecessary or socially unacceptable, they will walk away because they don't need to pretend to be Christians anymore. They don't need it to fit into culture. They don't need to do it to feel like they belong. So there are many who will claim that they belong who do not. Many who say that they are Christians, but they are not. And so the love that they had grows cold because they were never genuine believers. So verse 13 contrasts that. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. Now you may be thinking that now, are you saying that there are people, they're saved and then now they're not saved anymore, and so only those that are saved and endure to the end, those are the ones that will find? No, that's not what we're saying. Listen, once Jesus has you, He's got you forever.
Yes.
You can't be born again and unborn and born and unborn and born and unborn. When you're born again, that's it. It's done. You're His forever and I'm His. So what then does it mean, the one who endures to the end? Well, interestingly enough, the word means something that's already completed. It's already finished. Our endurance is already done. Here's the way 1 John 5, 4 and 5 describes it. For everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. Who is it that overcomes the world except the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God? In other words, if you have genuinely put your faith in Jesus Christ, you already have the victory.
That's right.
So now we want to live that because I belong to Him. I will, think of it this way. If Jesus has a hold of me to the end, then I want to make sure I have a hold of Him to the end. And so how are genuine believers shown is because of our faithfulness to the one who has been faithful to us to the end. And then I love verse 14. And this gospel of the kingdom, this good news that Jesus died and rose again so that we could be forgiven and we could experience the grace and forgiveness of God. This message will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations. But what in the world are nations? The word translated nations is actually the word ethnic. To all ethnicities. In other words, here's what he's saying. When we get to heaven, there will not be one single people group that is not represented around the throne of Jesus Christ. There are not going to be lost tribes who are not represented in heaven. Every single people group on the planet will be represented in heaven before the throne of Jesus Christ, so that every tribe and every tongue and every people will shout the glories of Jesus Christ forever and ever. So this message will be, then after that, then the end will come. Now notice he says it over and over and over again. Be careful, lest you be led astray. How does this leading astray happen? Well, I happen to have a piece of delicious chocolate cake. Now come on, let's be honest. We really don't need to use the word delicious, do we? Chocolate cake is enough. Man, I like chocolate. I like anything with chocolate. Come on now. I like anything with chocolate. Good, I got some family here, so I like anything with chocolate. So man, in this piece, this is the way it's supposed to be. Chocolate cake with chocolate icing. Paul, you like chocolate cake? Yeah, but now I didn't need to warn you though, I put poison in it. Now watch this. Here's how lead astray false prophets are. They'll say, man, I got something sweet for you. But they don't tell you they've laced it with poison. They don't say, hey, I got a bottle of poison, but I put a little chocolate icing on it, makes it good. It sounds good. It sounds plausible. But it's laced with poison. So, well, then how do we know what someone is teaching? How can we know if it is the truth? How can we know that they're not leading us astray? Here's how we can know. If the message varies, strays, ignores, downplays the fact that Jesus Christ died a substitutionary death on the cross, was buried and rose again the third day, ascended into heaven, and is someday coming to gather His own, and the only way to spend forever with Him in heaven is to put all of our faith and trust in what He has done. If that message is not there, it is poison. If any other message is there, it is poison. If that's message plus other stuff, it is poison. This is the truth, and this is what Jesus says we must stay true to.
Yes.
Because there are many who are going to want to lace it with other stuff. So here's the calling Jesus say, beware that no one leads you astray. They're going to be different. Now here's what we oftentimes think about staying true. Think, all right, here's how I stay true. I just walk the straight line. I stay straight with Jesus. I'm walking with Jesus. I'm not looking anywhere else. I'm staying straight with Him. That is not the way it works. First of all, some of you couldn't walk a straight line. If we did this at 5:30 in the morning, you sure couldn't walk a straight line. Everything's just blurry in the morning. I mean, you just have problems trying to get out of the bed into the bathroom. I mean, it's just everywhere. So that's not what He's talking about. That's easy. That's not what Jesus said. Here's what Jesus said. Jesus said, I want you to get from here to there. Look, this isn't even straight. This thing curves. And we got obstacles and chairs. And we got to kind of do sideways. Now, you're going to date yourself. How many of y'all remember the Icky Shuffle? For some of you, it would be SpongeBob. But anyway, and so here's what happens. It's difficult. It's challenging. There are obstacles. And now let's make it even more complicated. Not only is the path itself difficult, but there are people who are trying to stop you. And then there's some fool down here who says, hey, wait a minute, come down here. Here's the easy road. Come down here and God will make everything in your life wonderful. You'll be rich and healthy and all. Man, come down here. This is what it's all about. No, you don't need to suffer persecution. You don't need to stay there. Come down here where it's easy. Do not be led astray. Yes. When there are obstacles and there are enemies, you stay the course. Stay true to Jesus Christ. Now, how do we do that? We do that by keeping our eyes not on the obstacles and enemies, but keeping our eye on the prize. Yes. And what is the prize? The prize is that someday we will spend forever in the presence of Jesus Christ, celebrating and worshiping Him forever and ever and ever and ever. No tears, no sorrow, no tribulation, no death, no difficulty, forever celebrating the greatness of Jesus Christ. So when you run into obstacles and there are enemies who oppose you and they want to bring tribulation and they want to mislead you, you stay true to Jesus. Keep your eyes on the prize. Yeah. Do not let anyone lead you astray. And when your eyes are on the prize and you realize how great it is to worship and serve and celebrate Jesus Christ, the trials and difficulties of this life fade away. They are nothing compared to the glories that we have in Jesus Christ. When life gets challenging, when you see nation against nation, when you are delivered up to tribulation, even if you are put to death, when those who claim to be believers turn on you and even hate you, keep your eyes on Jesus. We do not have a temporal perspective, we have an eternal perspective. And it stretches in both directions. We look to the past, to Him who was crucified before the foundation of the world, and we look to the future when He shall gather us to be with Him forever. Yes. No one will lead you astray when you're stuck to Jesus. And the great news is that Jesus is stuck to us as well. He has committed Himself to us even more than we have committed ourselves to Him. So when it happens, stay true, stay focused. Jesus will bring us to the end in His glory.